So here's an extract from my new book, Wings of Glory, by me, Dermot O'Leary. It's chapter 4. This is when Linus the Swift meets his squadron for the first time. Cock-a-doodle-doo! Rise and shine, you lovely lot. Cock-a-doodle-doo! Roll call in 5 minutes. Linus prized one eye open to see a pale light trickling through the barn doors. An old cockerel was sounding the wake-up call, breaking the silence of the dawn. And another bird was lighting a candle, casting a warm glow on the sleeping shapes around them. Linus hadn't slept in the nest for so long that he'd forgotten what a good night's sleep felt like. He looked around his new home for the first time. Dotted around the top 2 floors of the barn were small nests of all shapes and sizes, from which an array of different birds were slowly emerging, ruffling their feathers and hopping down to the floor where a group of busy-looking mice were filling several bird baths. The nests were all full, bar one, next to Linus on the right, and he glanced over to see an empty space where Ava, his sister, should be. He felt a dull ache in his stomach. All he could think about was his sister. He was racked with worry, but he had to try and put it out of his head. She'd want you to fly. Get out there today and show what you can do. Ah, young Linus, the booming screech of the goshawk echoed across the barn. I trust you slept well? You certainly sounded like you did with all your snoring. The rest of the birds in the barn cackled good-naturedly. Can I impose on you to hop down here and meet your new bee squadron mates? Linus hopped down and was immediately surrounded by 5 birds who dwarfed him. So this is the speedster you promised is going to whip us into shape, a friendly magpie piped up. This here is Pika, Atticus gestured to the magpie, who held out a wing. Not the fastest in the squadron, but definitely the most intelligent. Pika beamed at the compliment. She has her ear to the ground, keeps in contact with D Squadron, the bats, who work as our radar department. Normally nocturnal, but with the war on and so, they've been working around the clock. Plus, she works with the underground mole network, the very brave volunteers who keep tabs on enemy activity. She's also our best scrounger, so if you want anything, your favourite insects, more straw for your nest, just let her know. Pika winked at Linus and clicked her beak. One last thing, Atticus went on. She steals anything not nailed down, so watch out. I'm just glad she's on our side. What can I say? It's in my nature, shrugged Pika. These 2 over here, continued Atticus, are our twins, Victor and Vera, local marsh harriers. Deadly quick, and they know every inch of the marshes around the coastline. Any questions? Just ask them. Plus, they're very good at catching breakfast. The birds shook Atticus by the wing. And last of the motley crew who make up the squadron of misfits is still asleep. Tyrone, you lazy so-and-so, get up! Atticus yelled. The moon-like round face of a barn owl poked his head out of a nest on the top floor. Oh, hello. Nice to make your acquaintance, he said, blinking in the daylight. And for the record, I'm not lazy, I'm just nocturnal, so I'm going back to bed. With that, he disappeared back into his nest. Atticus shook his head in resignation. There's no finer flyer and hunter at night, but he does need his beauty sleep, he sighed. So, Linus, that's our bee squadron and your new family. Now, come outside for roll call and I'll explain how we work. Oh, but before I forget, let me just give you this. He smiled as he clipped a light and dark blue ring onto Linus's tiny leg. Good to have you flying with us, Pilot Officer Linus the Swift. The goshawk and the rest of the squadron saluted. Linus saluted back, his heart swelling with pride. There were a raggle-taggle crew of all shapes and sizes, and a world away from the smartly preened falcons. But they seemed friendly, and right now Linus could do with all the friends he could get. The cockerel finished his squawking, wah, and the birds made their way into the farmyard, where they fell into their respective squadrons. Linus looked up to see an old clock on the top of the barn below a rusty weather vane. Even though it was 6 a.m, the farmyard was alive with activity. All around him was an array of field mice and voles who were preparing breakfast, filling troughs with seed and grains. To the left, standing in perfect formation, were the falcons of A Squadron. Linus looked over to see their squadron leader, Marcus, watching him intently, and his wingman, Marmaduke, by his side, glaring at the little swift. A squadron of pigeons of all colours, sizes, cuckooed about, coo-coo, coo-coo-coo, pecking at seeds on the floor, and Linus could see D Squadron, the radar bats, hanging upside down under a shaded slope roof that extended from one of the barn doors. At the front of the farmyard, The door of the house opened and the busy-looking buzzard, flanked by 6 officious-looking starlings, hopped confidently towards the farmyard to address the troops. "That's Wing Commander Butler," whispered Atticus. "He's in charge of all the squadrons in Flight Group 11. He's a good sort, though always stressed. And don't let him anywhere near a rabbit, even in wartime. Buzzards and rabbits can get very messy, if you know what I mean," the old goshawk grimaced. "So," it continued, "here's how it all works. 6 o'clock sharp every morning on the parade ground. That's where we get our orders for the day ahead. Our mission is simple: to intercept, harass and sabotage, and where possible destroy enemy planes by all means, be they beak, claw or poo. In poo we trust. That's the RBF mantra," he chuckled. "We're the first line of defence for the country. And we work alongside the humans. Now their airfield is just on the other side of the hedgerow. Not that they actually know we're here, thankfully. Now, thanks to our Batson D Squadron, who, as I said, act as our radar, we know when the enemy planes are coming before the humans do. As soon as the bats hear them inbound, they pass the flight path onto C Squadron. That's our carrier pigeons, and they take the messages to the human squadron. Then the Falcons of A Squadron fly to intercept the enemy and attack the planes before the humans get here." "Sounds amazing," Linus had to admit. He was excited. And as this was his first day on the front line, even with Ava's loss weighing heavily on his shoulders, he couldn't wait to get started and avenge his sister. "So, what's our job?" he asked excitedly. Well, we perform more of a support role, spotting aircraft, wasps, helping guard animals working in the fences." "What?" Linus was very confused. Yeah. His Majesty's Animal Air Ministry in London decided the peregrines were to be given the task of leading the missions and B Squadron would just fly support. It's a bit, who you know, not what you know, if you get my drift, Atticus answered, looking embarrassed. Linus was crestfallen. He'd come all this way to fly with the best, the Falcons. He'd done his bit, he'd signed up, and he was as fast as any of these birds, faster even. And now he was going to spend the whole war guarding defensives, spotting wasps or suspicious-looking animals. He should never have left Africa, and his sister had been lost in vain. "Good morning, my brave avians and mammals of the RBF, Wing Commander Butler piped up. "Today we have beaucoup de movement. Our underground mole network heard last night from the humans there are bombing raids expected all over the south of England. Also last night, somehow, the blackout blinds were stolen and the clock tower lights were turned on the town hall." "That's a worry," Atticus whispered to Linus. "There's a rumour there's a traitor thereabouts. Some say foxes. I just think it's closer to home. The odd thing is, only we and the other 2 fighter groups stationed nearby have keys to that clock tower because we use it as an observation post. So either there was a break-in or there's a traitor amongst us." Read the book, Wings of Glory, to find out how.